how did you get interested in the topics you talked about on your panel, and what sort of led you to being a judge?
Well, I'll take the first one. I became a judge somewhat by accident. I had always been interested in the substance of the law and where it is going. I was also interested in economics. And when I was pretty early on in my law practice, I had the right friends in Washington who thought I was capable. They knew my views about things, and they offered me the opportunity to be a federal judge. So I was very happy to take it. It was not going to be as controversial an appointment as they've become now. So I was very fortunate. And the second question is, how did I get interested in the rights of property? Ever since, well, as I said, I majored in economics in college, but I had also had an abiding interest in political theory, an abiding love for the processes of democracy under our Constitution. My father was a self-made man. My mother was a self-made woman. April 15th was a day of mourning in our house because of the incursions of the tax code on the money that he worked very hard to earn. And so I wondered about the relationship between government and the individual for quite a long time. And the more I studied economics, the more I became interested, particularly through Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell, in the importance of private property and the free enterprise system to protecting the rights that we hold dear.
What topic or idea that you discussed kind of surrounding property rights during the panel do you think is most important for Americans to know today?
Well, property, as Professor Watson said at the end of the panel, according to the philosophers of the Enlightenment, is inherently part of one's self-definition. So property embodies a great deal more than just the physical things of which we take hold. Property involves our acquisitiveness, our mental acquisitiveness, what we learn during the course of our lives that contributes to hopefully wisdom, and yet, without being able to see the fruits of these internal aspects of our property, we're not fully complete. And so every person ultimately looks at themselves, every person except monks and hermits, looks at themselves in terms of, what have I done with my life? Have I anything to show for it? And it's more than material possessions, it's the symbolism that those represent and the sort of the living proof of whatever one has been able to do.
You mentioned that your parents were self-made men and women. Do you think your upbringing has had a large impact on how you view property rights?
Undoubtedly so.
What topic do you think is most misunderstood by Americans about property rights?
Most misunderstood. Well, in elite universities, what's most misunderstood is that property doesn't grow on trees. And that may be a problem of the system of tenure, I'm not sure. Guaranteed income in exchange for minimal teaching in many places. Property grows out of the sweat of people's brow, and that's why government should look very closely at the balance of good and, what do you call it, good and ill, or benefits and detriments before it taxes away what people have earned by the sweat of their brow or regulates it heavily.
Were there any sort of topics or ideas that you didn't get the chance to talk about during the panel that you'd like to expand on now?
There was one point I wanted to make about the law, and that is the irony that many judicial conservatives are among the severest critics of the Lochner and Adkins cases that I discussed. Judge Robert Bork, Justice William Rehnquist were both, and I think Justice Scalia, criticized Lochner and Adkins as being based on freedom of contract, which is not expressly mentioned in the due process clause. But the irony is that the founders wouldn't have doubted the freedom of contract is part of the liberties of acquiring, possessing, and transferring property that is within the due process clause. And although the property component of liberty was basically disavowed by the Supreme Court in decisions of the 30s, those very same justices, such as Oliver Wendell Holmes, decided that they were capable of deciding what other liberties are so fundamental that judges are going to regulate them, and which they have regulated vigorously ever since. And one of those was the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, free exercise, establishment of religion, right of assembly, and they smuggled in these conceptions of liberty or into constitutional adjudication when they were unwilling to keep as a backstop the court's ability to interpret the ultimate limit of the freedoms that underlie property.
Do you think Calvin Coolidge's positions on the Declaration and the Constitution are still relevant today? And if so, what should viewers know about those positions?
I think his positions are more relevant today than ever. I think when you read the inspiration of the Declaration, when you read his statements about taxation, about limited government, the idea that people should be free to make their own way in life, those are timeless statements, as so many speakers reiterated. If those do embody and relate to natural rights, then they are natural rights. And we have seen most clearly in the last few years the outcome of the progressive movement, which is to deny natural rights, to deny that, to assume that any faculty or ability of an individual is ultimately at the service of the state because the state can regulate it.